My friends, good evening, everyone. If you would join me, we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 17. If you need a Bible, you raise your hand and we'll bring a Bible around to you. We're in chapter 17 tonight. I think we've got like 58 verses. So we're only going to be in chapter 17 tonight. This is the chapter that everyone pretty much has memorized. People that don't even, people that don't go to church or, aren't following Jesus. This is a story they recognize. This is that chapter of David and Goliath. As we study this chapter, I would encourage you to not check out of this chapter. It's easy sometimes. One, it's easy in the Old Testament to think, oh, it's Old Testament stuff. It doesn't pertain to me, so I'm just kind of tune out a little bit. Or when we come to sections that we are familiar with, like David and Goliath, it's also easy to kind of check out and do a little bit of autopilot. Let's try and avoid those two mentalities. One of the things that was especially fun for me in this chapter that we should always be trying to do when we are studying the Old Testament is look for Jesus. Look for all of these, types or foreshadowings or little pictures or little insights that shows us something about the character of Jesus, the mission of Jesus, the coming of Jesus. We're actually going to have quite a bit of those that we're going to point out as we go through these 58 verses as well. So let's pray and let's dive in. Lord Jesus, thank you so much for the night that you've given to us. Help us, Lord, to just slow down and to find our rest in you in this moment, this evening, Lord. As we are studying your word, as we're desiring to just be in your presence and to hear from you and to study your word, help us, Lord, to do that. To set down the hurts, to set down the burden, to set down the anxieties, and just rest in you. And we love you, Lord, and we pray in your name. Amen. Okay, chapter 17, let's see, verses 1 through... we'll say 24. We're going to call that the setup. So we've got a little bit of background information we need to get into. So verse 1, now the Philistines gathered their armies together to battle and were gathered at Soko, which belongs to Judah. They encamped between Soko and Azekah in Ephes-Dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side with a valley between them. So it's a battle between the Israelites and the Philistines, something that we've been kind of studying as we're going through a little bit of Judges, but largely in the book of 1 Samuel. So they're basically in a valley, but the two different armies are encamped on just some hillsides with a little valley and a stream running between the two of them. And they're about 15 miles southwest of Jerusalem. So that's kind of what we're dealing with so far. And a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath, from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head. He was armed with a coat of mail. The weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze, and he had bronze armor on his legs and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. Now the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his iron spearhead weighed 600 shekels, and a shield bearer went before him. So we know kind of who's fighting, we know where they're fighting, and now we're introduced to the Philistines' champion. You can blurt it out if you want to, I suppose. But when I say, give me the what does the word champion mean? What does the word champion mean to you? And everyone's probably was like, oh, well, that's the guy that's best in their field. That's the guy that best represents an organization. Well, champion, that's the guy on the front of the Wheaties box. We have all these things of champion. Literally, what that word champion means is middleman. It means the man in the middle, mediator. Essentially, he's the one that goes out in between two armies, representing one of the armies. It's kind of interesting. They have their champion. The Philistines have their champion. The Israelites are going to be looking for theirs. And we know, right, do we not already have our man in the middle? We already have our mediator. Our mediator is found in Jesus, something that was given to us in the New Testament. There was one mediator between God and man, and that is whom? The man, Jesus Christ. So I just like already kind of the direction that this chapter is going. So you have this dude, this Philistine from Gath, and he's like 9'9", carrying almost anywhere from 150 pounds to 200 pounds of armor. And he's got so much stuff that he's also got an armor bearer that's carrying his shield to go with him. He's a big dude. And our problems always look big when we focus on our problems. Have you noticed the more you stare at one particular thing, the bigger it just kind of grows in your vision? And it's not until someone that has some external perspective that comes alongside and tells you, oh, that's not that bad. You can just fix it with this. You're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Because you are in panic level expert. Largely, that's what it is. And that's what the Philistines from Gath, that's what people like Goliath were good for. We remember as we were studying the book of Numbers, when the Israelites had left Egypt and they came up to Kadesh Barnea, one of those further south desert regions before you actually get into the land of Canaan. They sent 12 spies into the land for how many days? Good, 40. For 40 days, these spies spied out the whole breadth of the land. They come back. 2 spies like, guys, we got to go now. Look at the size of these grapes. It took 2 men to carry a bunch of grapes. That is a cluster of grapes. But the other 10 spies, what do they say? We can't go. Their cities are fortified. Their walls are too tall. And you should see the inhabitants. They're huge. We are like grasshoppers in their sight. We do not stand a chance. So they're able to convince the whole rest of the Israelites to run away, to not go in the promised land because of guys just like Goliath. Verse 8. Then he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel and said to them, why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And you, the servants of Saul, choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. So he's doing what is kind of, I don't know how typical it is. I know historically it has happened to save time and to save cost, to save lives. It's like, you know what? Instead of us just all rushing down there and duking it out, let's just do this the old-fashioned way. Our best guy versus your best guy, winner takes all. That's essentially what he's challenging them to. Winner takes all, just the 2 of us. And you kind of ask the question, it's like, I don't really understand. They're all lined up for battle. Why don't they just rush down the hill and start fighting each other? Because they're both set up, for anybody that likes to pay attention to old military battles, but they're both set up on hillsides. So if someone rushes into battle too soon, they've lost all advantage, and the next group just has to swoop in over the top of them while firing down upon them. It's a bad idea. So the Philistines are backed off, the Israelites are backed off, and here is Goliath and his armor bearer just kind of prancing up towards the front and challenging them to one-on-one combat. If he is able to fight me, verse 9, and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Faith and fear. That is largely what we're going to be studying. Faith is really going to set you up, but fear is really going to shut you up. And here we see Saul and Israel, they are greatly afraid. And they are dismayed. That word dismayed literally translates into shattered. They were completely shut down and demoralized. So essentially, they've lost the fight before the fight has even started. That's one of the things that the enemy strives to do. When you lose that battle in your mind, the body just seems something about it, just just to follow it instinctively. And it's interesting, they start with Saul being afraid first. Why is Saul being mentioned first as being afraid and dismayed? How tall is Goliath? Around 9'6" to 9'9", depending on how you interpret a span. I like to think he's 9'9", right? The bigger the better. Who's the tallest Israelite? It's Saul. Remember, Saul is head and shoulders taller than everybody else, which means if like the average, I don't know, we'll say like, I don't know what they were, but let's say most Israelites were 6 foot tall. That would make Saul roughly 7 foot tall. So because he was the tallest one, that would naturally make him the best person to fight Goliath. So, and obviously, he is not a fan. You might say, well, what's going on? Saul whooped a whole bunch of these Philistines and other Istines that are running around in Canaan. What's going on? Saul is no longer what? He's no longer empowered by the Spirit of God. We don't have a spirit of fear within us. We have a spirit of what? Boldness. That spirit of boldness that was divinely enabling Saul, especially for combat and actions of a king. That spirit has left Saul and is now upon David. So Saul does not want to fight either. They're all completely shut down because of fear. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and who had 8 sons, and the man was old, advanced in years, in the days of Saul. So some time has transpired. I don't know how old David is. I think he's somewhere between 15 and 19 years old. For Israelite men to go into the military, like David's 3 oldest brothers, you had to be 20 years old. So we know David wasn't 20, and we know he wasn't 5, so he's somewhere in the middle. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had gone to follow Saul to the battle. The names of his 3 sons who went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest, and the 3 oldest followed Saul. But David occasionally went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. Just letting us know his background context, why David, who was supposed to be an armor bearer, right? That's what we studied in chapter 16 last week, why he wasn't with Saul. David didn't become an armor bearer yet. He's going to get there as he gets a little older, it would seem. But while he was in Saul's company, it was only while Saul had a distressing spirit. Because where David was staying in Bethlehem was not that far from Gibeah of Saul. So whenever there's a distressing spirit, he would spend time in Saul's presence. When there wasn't the distressing spirit, he would go home and he would take care of the flocks. And the Philistine drew near and presented himself 40 days, morning and evening. 80 times Goliath, right, morning and evening for 40 days, 80 times Goliath had presented himself before the Israelites. And it's just interesting that he's doing it for 40 days. There's just something about the number 40. Always seems to have this connotation of trial, of testing, or of judgment, doesn't it? How long did it rain on the ark? 40 days. How long did they wander in the wilderness? 40 days. How long was Jesus tempted in the wilderness? 40 days. It's just interesting how many times it keeps coming up. Now, they're not being judged here, but I do think they're being tested. I do think they're being tried. I do think they are being challenged. Are they going to move forward in faith, or are they going to continue to be shut down in fear? Then Jesse said to his son David, "Take now for your brothers an ephah of this dried grain, these 10 loaves, and run to your brothers at the camp. Carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers fare, and bring back news of them." Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. So David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with the keeper, which is just kind of neat. his caring, responsible hand as a shepherd, took the things and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp as the army was going out to fight and shouting for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array, army against army. But David left his supplies in the hand of the supply keeper, ran to the army, and came and greeted his brothers. Then he talked with them. There was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines, and he spoke according to the same words, so David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. So verses 1 through 24, that is set up. For 40 days, this champion, this middleman of the Philistines would come down into the valley and would basically taunt the Israelites. Send one person down to meet me. If you win, we serve you. If I win, you'll serve me. Twice a day, he was doing it. David made his way to the front lines to where he could hear the Philistines speaking. So verses 1 through 24 was the setup. Beginning in verse 25 is the step up. We're going to see what David is going to do, how David is going to respond to the situation. So the men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man who has come up?" You can almost like hear it in their voice, can't you? Like they're in shock and awe, but obviously in fear of this great big dude that the Philistines have fighting for them. Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will, three things. The king will enrich him with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel. The king has got to bribe somebody with the only things he can think of. Whoever wants to be our champion, whoever wants to be our middleman, our mediator, if you win, you get three things: an inheritance, a bride, and freedom. Kind of neat, isn't it? Since Jesus is our mediator and Jesus won, what three things did he get? Ephesians chapter 1 tells us that we are his what? Inheritance. Ephesians 5 in the book of Revelation tells us that we are Christ's bride. And anyone in the champion's, the Father's house, has freedom. Whenever we study our Old Testaments, we really need to look for Jesus. Some of us, when we read and we study, we kind of do it a little bit, I don't know, without purpose. Without focus is probably a better word for it. Finding Jesus in the Old Testament pages is just kind of one of the coolest things ever, especially since he comes from the seed of David. So then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, "What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach of Israel?" Notice his focus. His focus is more on Israel's reputation, but also on the glory of the Lord. That's more where his focus is. The way he's kind of phrasing this one, basically David as a youth, we'll just say he's about 15, 16 years old. He's trying to encourage someone to step up and to fight the Philistine. For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? I like how David identifies him as an uncircumcised Philistine. Why does he say that? Can't he just say Philistine? Big dude? Bully? He could have called him anything else, but he comes at him with what? Uncircumcised Philistine. That's a weird taunt. One that I don't know that I've ever heard in public. Why does David say it? What David is essentially saying is, you don't belong here. He's standing on covenant land. He's standing on land that was given to the Israelites, land that does not belongeth to the Philistines. And he's saying, you know what? You do not belong to the Lord, because you do not bear the sign of the covenant. David and this is probably one of the best pieces of advice that I could largely give to a Christian in trial. David does not see this as a physical problem. Maybe think, well, Pastor, I don't understand. That dude's 9'9". I see it as a physical problem. I wouldn't want to fight that guy. David doesn't see it as a physical problem. Do we not look at all of our problems as physical problems? Everything, we look at them physically, right? All the turmoil and the conspiracy nonsense and all the stuff that's going on with our nation right now. What's like the first thing out of, I don't know, any red state member's mouth? Those screwy Democrats ruining everything. This person's ruining it. That person's ruining it. This person, and we completely make everything physical. We deny everything that's going on behind the scenes. David sees it. He could have just said, oh, this Philistine. He could have addressed him like everybody else. This man, this guy, that champion. Nope, he says this uncircumcised Philistine. He doesn't recognize this physical. He recognizes this as a spiritual problem. So David is going to make a move to handle it what? Spiritually. He's going to move forward in faith instead of running away because of what he is seeing and what he is hearing. And the people answered him in this manner, saying, so shall it be, done for the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, I got to warn you, whenever you step up in faith, you're always going to have someone there to discourage. Often it'll come from family members. I'd like to say it will never come from Christians, but that would just be stupid. Because Christians, even Christians, especially Christians, hate it when they see someone else step up in faith when they know they should have. Or they see someone that it doesn't make any sense that they step up in faith when you should have. For example, a lot of the places we go and the people that go around with me, when I go to conferences or whatever else, often I'll take Kyle with me. And he's like, oh, we should go pray for that person. It's like, shut up, Kyle, I should have thought of that. And I'm kicking myself. I was like, Lord, I'm supposed to be a follower of Jesus. I'm your follower. I'm supposed to be a pastor. I can't even, I know I should be praying all the time. And great, now he's going to pray for somebody else. And sometimes, right, the stuff that they're doing and stepping out in faith, sometimes it's going to bring on the naysayers. It's going to bring on the discouragers. We got to, as a church, right, as Christians, we got to fight that mentality. We should be encouragers in the faith. But here's old Eliab. He sees his kid brother, the youngest, the runt of the flock, who we remember a few chapters ago, he was not even mentioned by name by the family. He's like, oh yeah, there's a little one. He's just weird looking with bright eyes. He's out there in the field. He wasn't mentioned by name, wasn't called by name. He wasn't even invited to the sacrifice. He wasn't invited to the barbecue. They had left him out in the field. So now here's Eliab hearing David. He's like, I know that squeaky voice. Where is he? And he's over here telling people, shouldn't anybody be down there fighting this uncircumcised Philistine? So now Eliab, his temper's growing. So this is how he responds. Sometimes this is how people of the faith respond to somebody's demonstration of faith. So when Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David, and he said, why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. There's basically, I think, 3, maybe 4 reasons as to why, given in this text, as to why Eliab's heart was so just embittered against David. Reason number 1, he thought David is being insignificant. What are you even doing here, runt? You're supposed to be out in the wilderness somewhere, taking care of the sheep. You leave all the important man stuff to the important grown-up men. You go back over there and you tend to the sheep. Reason number 2, accuses him of wrong motive. That happens often, doesn't it? Being accused of a wrong motive. Reason number 3, it's possible that he saw David as trying to push others to go fight in the battle because David just wanted to watch a fight. How many of you have siblings? Does that sound familiar? How many times you and your siblings, or you and your friends, try and egg each other on or try to make a situation a little bit worse because you just want to see somebody get in a tussle in the wilderness? But number 4, I think the biggest reason, and this is my opinion, I think the biggest reason that Eliab is so mad at David, because David is right. Don't we hate that? We can say anything we want to. It's like, you know what? You're here for the wrong reasons. You're being poisonous among the men. You're not good enough to be here. But at the very end of the day, they're right, and we know it. There's something going on with their faith. Their fire is so bright, and ours is so diminished. We have to extinguish it. One of the saddest stories. Megan and I were saved at the same time, but we were like 9,000 miles apart. Craziest thing ever. So I was essentially saved or brought back into a relationship with the Lord, and I was baptized in the middle of Iraq. She came to the Lord, and she was baptized in Twin Falls, Idaho. She was attending one of the churches in Twin Falls, and she was like all new believers, right? We get really crazy about our faith. The fire is hot, and we just want to set everything else on fire with it. We want to tell everybody about Jesus. We're reading our Bibles. We're praying. We're attending fellowship. And she was going to this church, and she was so excited. She was talking to one of the older gals of the church, and the older gals kind of looked at her and was like, "Oh, you're one of those brand new Christians, aren't you?" So excited. She's like, "Oh yeah, I just accepted Jesus like a month ago." I was like, "Oh, don't worry. That's going to go away." A pile of hot garbage. When our fire is not going to be like somebody else's fire, or our work is not going to be like somebody else's work, instead of stoking up and feeding our fire, I don't know what it is. It just seems easier to try and stomp somebody else's out a little bit, to try and bring them down to a level instead of us essentially trying to grow and rise up to a particular level. So here's Eliab scorning his brother, which is interesting because Jesus was also scorned by his brethren. And David said, "What have I done now? Is there not a cause?" I love that. David is not deterred by his brother's nonsense. So then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing. And these people answered him as the first ones did. So he is essentially, trying to get someone to step up and to fight this Philistine, and he's getting the exact same answers from everybody else. Don't let everybody else's answers and their lack of flame deter and snuff out yours. You're called in the Lord. Move forward in the Lord. Don't let them slow you down. So now when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to Saul, and he sent for him. Then David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with the Philistine." I can see a 15-year-old kid saying that. Have no fear. David's here. That's essentially what he's saying. That's what he's saying in the text. And Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." Kind of reminds me of something that the Apostle Paul said. Let no one despise you because of your youth. People are going to despise you. Essentially what Paul is getting at is let no one deter you because of your youth. You're always going to be younger than somebody. So if you're worried about being despised because of your youth, you're never going to go anywhere. So we can't be deterred by it. But those of us that are mature in our faith, we should be encouragers, seeking to build somebody up in their faith, not to essentially deter them. I can understand why the king is doing this. David's somewhere around 15 years old, so it kind of makes sense. It's like, dude, you can't fight that guy. He has been tearing people to pieces since he was your age, and you still haven't gotten started yet. That's basically his response. But David said to Saul, "Your servant used to keep his father's sheep." I love the stuff that God does. Can you imagine the look on Saul's face? He's like, David, that's adorable. You can't fight Goliath. You're a kid. I used to tend sheep. Okay. I used to sell marshmallows. You still can't go. David said to Saul, your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and struck it, and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it. He took a lion by the beard and beat it to death with a stick. That's what he's saying. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. This is so cool for a number of reasons. It's going to be a long night for all of us, I think. First, the Lord was already training David. But there's no way David would have known that. Sometimes the Lord is training us, but the Lord's training methods are sometimes weird. And we had this conversation with Kyle. I like to meet with the teachers so we can just kind of go over notes before we start teaching. And Kyle's, he was a Krav Maga instructor. So I asked him, I was like, Kyle, if you're going to teach me and train me in Krav Maga, how would you do it? He's like, well, we do a lot, some sparring work. I was like, good, let's sparring. What am I sparring against? He's like, a person. David was being trained to fight a man, a big one, by fighting lions and bears, and maybe tigers. Sorry. It threw me off too. Sometimes we abandon what God is doing and how God is doing it because we don't understand it. That's pretty foolish to think that we understand everything that God is going to do. And when he does something that just doesn't make sense, it's like, you know what? I'm out. This doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, that's called faith. Trusting the Lord and trusting in his purposes. I don't think David knew that he was being trained to fight a dude. He was just being faithful in where he was placed in the moment, and that was tending sheep. And that's essentially what matters. God calls us to be faithful and diligent wherever we are. And then he's going to use that faithfulness to accomplish greater things. If you're not being faithful with where God has you now, can you expect or demand to be given more things, more responsibilities? You can't, because if you're faithless in the little things, if you're not diligent in the little things, you are going to be known to be not diligent or not faithful in the big ones. Doesn't Jesus tell us in the Gospels, hey, you are faithful in little things. Here you go. Here's more. Here's more responsibility. So he didn't know he was being trained. And he didn't know what he was being trained for. He didn't know he had to be responsible for any kind of training. The Lord took care of it. Moreover, David said, the Lord, this is a cool verse, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. David recognizes whose victory that was, because that's quite a thing to boast about. How many men, be honest, how many of you have ever daydreamed about fighting a bear in hand-to-hand combat? Really? That's it? I know it's stupid. I know it's dumb. And I know the odds are not in my favor. But I've always had this thing, especially when I'm camping, it's like if a bear were to come and attack my family right now, I have one knife and a sharp stick. I could do it. But imagine, Now imagine if you did it and you won. What do you think our sermon would be about if you found I killed a bear barehanded protecting my family? I came back on Sunday and I had some bruises, like some teeth marks. What do you think our sermon would be about? How awesome I am. It's like I fought that bear. It's easy to take those impossible victories and call it ours. A 15-year-old kid killed a bear and a lion. Like the stuff we struggle with anymore. David fully recognizes that victory was God's. That's how he is able. That truly is David's secret weapon. That is how he's able to say, right? Look how he's growing in boldness. Someone should fight that Philistine. Have no fear, David. I'm going to fight that Philistine. It's like, yeah, you're really stupid. It's like, nope. I've seen what the Lord can do. Fought a bear, fought a lion. I'm still here. I rescued my sheep, not because I'm some kind of like Israeli ninja, but because the Lord is with me. He is able to walk forward in faith and in boldness. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Saul's convinced. That's the most amazing part of this chapter to me. Why did Paul let a 15-year-old kid go fight in his place? Fear. Sometimes we fail to realize how strong fear really is. Is it a wonder to me that a kid killed a bear and a lion? No, that kid had the Spirit of God on him. Like that bear was in trouble the moment he looked at one of them sheep. Does it shock me that God can use a 15-year-old kid to kill a 9'9" Philistine? That doesn't shock me. It's neat that he did it with a rock. Sorry to throw a spoiler if you guys haven't read the story yet. That doesn't shock me. That Saul just let the kid go fight in his place. That's nuts. That is crazy to me. That's what fear does. Fear, if we let it, fear cancels out faith. That's why we have to grow and develop our faith to fight fear. But there's something that stops us from going there. I think it was Mueller, but I could be wrong. But he said, great faith, strong faith requires great and strong trials. We love the first part. The second part we're not so fond of. Because some of those trials are just, well, they're horrible. And now here's Saul willing to let young David go fight in his place. So Saul clothed David with his armor. Saul is still in the flesh. Like, all right, you're going to fight this battle. You got to be dressed for the battle. Saul is the tallest man in Israel. David's a teenager. So, I don't know. I hate to do it again. Have you guys seen Lord of the Rings? I think it's the second one. It might be the first one when Gimli puts on the armor and it's just dragging on the ground. Which one is that, Stephen? The second one? Dude, I was right. Thank you. That's probably what David looked like, right? The kid with his mom's wedding dress and it's just dragging all over the ground. David fastened his sword to his armor and tried to walk, for he had not tested them. And David said to Saul, I cannot wear these, for I have not tested them. So David took them off. A couple of very important points. One, church, you need to understand you are supposed to be armored up daily, right? Paul makes it very clear to us in Ephesians 6, somewhere around chapter 10, all the way to the end of the chapter. It's that armor of God, that spiritual armor section. You are supposed to be armored up. Number two, you cannot fight in somebody else's armor. Your armor is personal, very personal, because everybody is shaped differently. Therefore, your armor is going to fit you differently. You have to wear it. You have to wear it around. You have to train in it. Then you get it kind of put together the way you like it, and then any loose hanging straps, right? You've probably, seen movies, or some of you are military. We tape up our little straps to make sure they don't come undone. We set up our armor and our battle gear the way we like it, because it's not the same for everybody. I would wear my magazines lower because it was faster for me to reload than having them up higher. Some people are different. Different positions of your plates, different positions of your weapon systems, your sling, whatever it is. Your armor has to be personalized, which means you have to spend time tinkering with it. tinkering with your faith. How many of you know right off the top of your head what the armor of God was? Right? Helmet of salvation, shield of faith, breastplate of righteousness, belt of truth, sword of the Spirit to shod your feet in the preparation of the gospel. Tinker with your armor. Breastplate of righteousness. Doesn't fit right. Whose righteousness am I supposed to be clothed in? Helmet of salvation. Well, you better make sure that helmet fits right. That's one of the first things the enemy wants to take off. Do you know that you are saved? The sword of the Spirit, my favorite one. I can't wait to, he's not here now, I'm going to get Keith. He's going to have him make me a couple of swords. Anyway. How up to speed are you on your sword fighting? If I were to bring in 2 fencing swords right now in one of those fancy helmets, how many of you would have a go and think you could win? Not saying I'm a professional swordsman. That probably came out way wrong. I'd probably just apt to lose if we were fencing. I'm fluffy, like you can get me just about anywhere. But we should know the ins and outs, right, of our Bible. We should be, we should be training to be swordsmen. So even David's like, you know what, this doesn't fit right. This isn't mine. I can't just step into your armor. So we do have to ask that third question, right? How familiar are you with your armor? And David takes it off. Fully trusting in the Lord. Don't need the armor. It doesn't fit right. I haven't tested it. I can't move. My chainmail's dragging the ground. So he takes it off. Then he took his staff, his stick in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook. People get so weird right here. Why did David draw 5 smooth stones? We don't know. Everyone says, well, we do know that Goliath had brothers. It's a good line of thinking. How many brothers did Goliath have? We should know this. Did we just talk about the sword thing? How many brothers did he have? 4. So people say, oh, well, there's 5 of them, so he took 5 stones just in case he had to deal with the brothers too. It doesn't say that in the text. Why did David draw 5 stones? Probably because he always draws 5 stones. These stones range anywhere from a golf ball to a tennis ball sized stone. How many of those can you fit in a small pouch? As many as you can get in there. Probably somewhere around 4 in one in your hand. I don't know, but otherwise it doesn't tell us. So the Philistine came and began drawing near to David, and the man who bore the shield went before him. So now we've moved from the setup to the step up, and now David's about to finish up. Verse 42. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good looking. So the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. He was insulted as a man and a warrior. He was genuinely insulted. When it said he looked about for David, it means he was looking around for someone to fight, and he didn't see David initially. Completely overlooked. He probably saw David, and he was like, that's funny. Oh, you're here to tussle. That's probably what's meant. But his honor, his pride as a man and as a warrior is just afflicted that he uses that word dog. The same word, well, I'll let you do your own word search with your concordances to where that particular word is used. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. 100% David recognizes it's not a physical problem. It's a spiritual one. David fully sees and fully recognizes, how could you not, the size of these weapons? He fully sees the weapons. Do we also not fully see the weapons when we're under trial or we're under attack or we're under oppression? We fully see the weapons. Our problem is like the Apostle Peter's problem. We won't quit looking at them. You remember that story in the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Mark when Peter got out of the boat. It's like one of the most famous stories, like two people. We always say, oh, there's this one guy. One guy walked on water. Technically, it was two. I don't know how far Peter made it, but he did prance on out a little bit. The problem, what caused him to sink, is he took his eyes off of Jesus and put his eyes on the storm, put his eyes on the wave. It's like, oh, I'm really doing it. There's the Lord. Oh. And that's what we do. We look at the weapons, we focus on the weapons, but not David. He's like, yep, I come as emissary of the Lord. I come in the name, in the sending of the Lord. He recognizes the spiritual aspect and has full reliance on the Lord. This day, the Lord will deliver you into my hand. That's bold step number 3. First, he says, someone should go fight that uncircumcised Philistine. Then he says, you know what? I'm going to go kill that Philistine. I will go and kill Goliath. Now he says of Goliath to Goliath, I'm going to kill you. 15 years old. And such a powerful demonstration of faith. And I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth. So basically, he's 15. His trash talk is only so developed. Goliath says, I'm going to feed you the birds. David's like, I'm going to feed you to the birds. We know how it goes. But the why. When we're going to go and do something, whatever it is that we do, the why matters so much. David has 2 reasons. Reason number 1, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. What is his purpose? To glorify the Lord. Remember our definition of glorify. To know him more or to make him known more. He's saying, you know what? When I, short and ruddy, remove your head, change the vernacular. When wee man does a job that no one thought was possible, they can only say that was God. So when the Lord puts something so fearful in front of you, so impossible in front of you, when I say, you know what, Lord, I don't have the strength to do this. That's kind of the point. Because if you had the strength to do it, you wouldn't glorify the Lord. You'd be like, oh yeah, of course I could fight Goliath. I watched Conan the Barbarian 15 times. I learned all his moves. Like that Philistine didn't stand a chance. He's not going to glorify himself. He's there to glorify the Lord. Reason number 2 in verse 47. Then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. I love that. The victory of the champion is the people's victory. Likewise, the victory of Christ is your victory. So his point number 2, he's like, you know what? They're trusting in their weaponry too to save them. But through this, they're going to understand that maybe God can do something different than what you are supposing that he is going to do. So it was when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, that David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. That's just crazy. Great big Philistines running at David. David doesn't juke and jive and all the weird nonsense that we see in the little TV shows. He runs like straight at the Philistine. Then David put his hand in his bag, took out a stone, So then David put his hand in his bag, took out a stone, and he slung it and struck the Philistine in his forehead, so that the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the earth. That's it. When the Lord is involved, there's not a lot of commentary on battle. In fact, when you go to Revelation 19 and 20 or 21, there's two battles. You have the battle of Armageddon, which is spoken of in Revelation chapter 19. That's the one where Jesus comes back the second time, stops that battle. And the other battle, it's got to be in 20. It is. I think the other one's in 20. That's called the final battle. After the 1,000 years, the devil is released. He tempts people on the earth to surround the camps of the Lord. And it says he basically speaks a word and they're all gone. If God is involved, there's not going to be battle commentary. David ran forward, threw a rock, and killed Goliath, and he's dead. End of battle. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. We already know that because all he had was a sling. Therefore, David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword, drew it out of its sheath, and killed him and cut off his head with it. Why? Two reasons. First, David made him a promise. David is faithful. He keeps his word. He told him he was going to cut off his head, and that's exactly what David did. Reason number two, the Philistines, like the Amalekites, they give us quite a picture of our own flesh. And when you're trying to put to death the old man, you need to make sure it's like dead, not just mostly dead. David was not going to take a chance that the Philistine could get back up. So he ran forward without hesitation, drew the sword, and made sure that he was just going to stay down. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. You can't obviously trust that the enemy's going to keep their word. They were supposed to do what? Surrender the army. They have changed their mind, and now they are fleeing the battle space. Now the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines as far as the entrance of the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell along the road to Sha'araim, even as far as Gath and Ekron. It is quite the work when the Lord uses someone that shouldn't have done it, right? Like the fishermen, the disciples. At least 4 fishermen, probably 6, a tax collector, a zealot that stabs tax collectors, a traitor, and a couple of guys we don't really know much about. They're described, minus the traitor, they're described in the book of Acts as men that turn the world upside down. When someone does something that is just impossible, to where all they can say is, but God, it restokes the fire of everybody else. It's like proof. It's like, God really is in this thing. Okay, let's go. And it rallies them up. Very often, that is the purpose behind whom it is that the Lord uses, because it is encouraging. It's encouraging when you're humble. I mean, it's encouraging when you can be taught. If you're not humble, you're not going to be taught through the situation. It's like, Eliab, that was a lucky shot. I've seen him miss all sorts of beer cans. There's no way that was so lucky. The wind pushed it right into his face. When you're not humble, you won't be taught. And you need to be. But we think way too highly of ourselves. So you have to remind yourself of the question, why does God use broken people to accomplish the big things? Because broken people are the only kind that there is. The problem is, some of us really don't think that we're broken and that we are a perfect specimen embodiment of the servant of Jesus. And that kid had a lucky shot. Eliab didn't really say that, by the way, but I can just hear him on the mountain. It's like, I'm just going to tell Daddy fell. Then the children of Israel returned from chasing the Philistines, and they plundered their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. I don't know why he did that, but he did. When Saul saw David going out against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the commander of the army, Abner, whose son is this youth? A lot of us get really tripped up over that text, don't we? Shouldn't Saul already know who this guy is? This is the dude that's been playing for Saul. This is the guy that is requested. How does he not know David? Read the text slowly. He's not asking who David is. What is he asking? Who does this creature belong to? Why would the king ask that question? Someone's going to come in and sing so he can be peaceful. He doesn't care about David's pedigree. There's a difference now, isn't there? Saul's daughter's going to this creature. And he's about to give that household tax-free and a bunch of wealth. That's what he's asking. He's saying, whose son is that? Because apparently he's about to marry my daughter. I want to make sure he's not a bum or whatever. That's why he's asking the question. So as your soul lives, O king, I do not know. So the king said, inquire whose son this young man is. Then as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, whose son are you, young man? So David answered, I am the son of your servant, Jesse the Bethlehemite. You always have a choice. You can respond in fear. And you might say, well, Pastor, I'm not really all that fearful. Let's word it another way. You can always respond the way that the world responds. You can react the way that the world reacts. I'm going to fight physically with physical. I'm going to fight the spiritual with physical. I'm going to trust and lean on my own understanding. Or, so you can react in fear, or you can respond in faith. You might say, well, I wasn't given a specific dream to move forward in boldness. Probably because you might not need it. David didn't have a specific dream. Now, he was anointed and he was enabled, but it doesn't indicate in the text that he knew that. He also didn't receive a special dream or revelation. Arise, David, kill and behead. Go forth with your cheese wheels and go fight Goliath. He didn't get one of those. He trusted in the Lord because of past salvations, not eternal salvations, but he was delivered from a lion. He was delivered from a bear. When we are made afraid and dismayed, or supremely fearful and shattered, what that largely makes us is forgetful. We completely forget what this says. We completely forget what he has done in the past. And it causes us to react in fear instead of responding by faith. That's why we have to put ourselves at the feet of the King every single morning, so that we can be refreshed, we can be refilled, we can be reminded, so that we can respond like David. Maybe pump your brakes on have no fear, David is here. But you say, you know what? I'm here in the Lord. And when you're there in the Lord, your battle commentary is going to be wicked short. Amen? Let's pray. Father, I am so thankful that you have preserved your word for our instruction and our growth, for our encouragement. Lord, for our cleansing. We need it. It is easy to forget. And Lord, I love reading stories, especially like this one. This isn't just an underdog story. This is whatever is under an underdog story. Truly, we can do all things So powerful, Lord. And I know, God, that a lot of us really aren't listening. We aren't humble before you, and we are not allowing ourselves to be taught. Lord, correct our thinking and correct our spirit, because we do want to grow. We do, Lord, want to develop and grow in our faithfulness, to continue to grow there, Lord, so we can step into new horizons to glorify you. So thank you, Lord, for the encouragement of the text tonight.